They actually end up suggesting even the name of the doctor whom these people should be going to. So that is how it is. Okay, when you say that the slave is dependent on the master tells him what to do, under what kind of circumstances, what are the actions that the slave should take up for the well-being of the family. In return for these kind of things, uh, the slave does some physical work for the master. So what you have to understand here is that this is a symbiotic relationship. It's not a one-way relationship, it's a two-way relationship. Both are supposed to be benefiting from it. When we come down to Hegel, I will be doing a thing called the master-slave dialectic. Okay, and at that time, I will demonstrate to you how the master-slave dialectic that Hegel talks about is not applicable. Shut up! Shut up! How the master-slave dialectic is not applicable to uh, how it is not acceptable to I mean, sorry, I've got distracted. How it cannot be applied. How it cannot be applied to Aristotle, the master-slave dialectic. That is when it will become even more clearer to you uh, as to how that relationship is symbiotic. Because Hegel says that in a master-slave relationship, it is the slave who develops and the master doesn't develop. The master doesn't develop. But that is not the case you find in the politeia, where there is eudaimonia. Eudaimonia, which is an ethically good life. And I told you, for the Greeks, ethics and morals are both the same. And therefore, a morally, ethically good life, a morally, ethically good life uh, for both the slave and for the master, and women who are dependent on men. It's a bit retrograde, backward thinking compared to Plato. Plato is very, very avant-garde. He's somebody who is way, way ahead of his times.
So, do you think slavery was present during his times or
During whose times?
Aristotle?
Yeah, it was present. But he didn't support slavery the way it was. See, slaves were taken usually when wars were fought. Okay, when wars were fought and people were defeated, the defeated people were taken as slaves. They were taken as slaves, uh, and that is how the institution was. But Aristotle is trying to recast that institution a bit. Okay, is okay, you've been defeated. That is probably because you're not good as the one who has defeated you. So he is therefore advocating a different kind of a relationship between the master and the slave. Yes, Kirti, do you have anything else?
Yes, sir. I understood, sir, what you said. And one more doubt, sir.
Yeah.
Are there any, sir, uh,
Please.
Aristotle views on citizenship, sir?
See, I told you he wanted to broad base it as much as possible. Okay. He didn't want to keep it. He didn't want to keep it uh, as something which was narrow, only a few people being citizens, because for him that would lead to concentration of power. Okay, so that is why I said the location of politeia or the polity in between in the degenerative cycle, in order to stop the degenerative cycle, he locates it in between oligarchy and democracy. Okay, so what he's doing is when an oligarchy happens, let's replace it with democracy. Sorry, let's not replace it with democracy. Let us replace it with this thing called politeia, translated into English as polity. So that is where he intends to stop the degenerative cycle. And how do you plan to do it? Because it is difficult to corrupt a large body of people compared to corrupting a small body of people. So for him, making more people into citizens, making that as a higher number, that is the way in which you can stop people getting corrupted by power. So I told you yesterday, checks and balances. It was there in Aristotle as well, that whole thing. Because when you have a larger assembly of citizens sitting and discussing the future of the polity in a rational manner, then what you are in effect getting to see is this thing which is uh, to be called some kind of check, so that nobody hijacks the meeting and makes their agenda the agenda of everyone else. So that's why I keep quoting Nehru. Uh, when Nehru was asked uh, if he actually believed that democracy is a good form of government, his candid answer to that was that no, democracy is one of the worst forms of government from the list of the bad forms of government. Okay, so he says it's not a good form of government, but I still support democracy because it is the lesser of various evils, and the lesser of various evils meaning that we had seen, we meaning the world, not you and I, the world had seen what Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, and General Franco in Spain, what all these people had done as dictators. So it was up to uh, Nehru to believe that, when you have a democracy, when you have, and he believed in popular sovereignty, he believed that because in a democracy, not all, for example, if you did Austin's theory of monism, in that he says law is supreme. Okay, that's what Austin says. Sovereignty is law. And how is law created? Law is created by a set of people or one person who is seen as a wise person, or for any other reason, he is acceptable as a framer of laws. So once this group of people or a single person ends up framing laws, and these are all still oral laws, mind you, not very, they hadn't yet come to written constitutions. So what you are actually seeing is that these people are uh, accepted as those who can frame proper laws. And once the laws are framed and put in place, then the supreme power, sovereignty, lies within the laws. That is the theory of monism. So there is only one source of sovereignty, which is in, uh, say, in the hands of, or rather, in contained in the law of the land. That is the supreme power. But when you talk about popular sovereignty in a democracy, we don't talk about this legal sovereignty or monism. We talk about sovereignty lying among people. And if it is a pluralist society, if it is a pluralist society, pluralism, please understand, is not just the existence of different kinds of cultural groups. If they exist and they are quiet, then you'll only say that it is a variegated society, which means that there are different forms of cultures present in that particular society. But if in these different groups start asserting their identities and seeking rights for themselves, okay, one of the reasons why we don't have a uniform civil code in India is because uh, the personal laws which are applicable to the Hindus, the Muslims, the Sikhs, uh, all these are in the constitution. They have a separate personal law, so it is constitutionally recognized. So which means that we have a plural sovereignty, because these groups have argued, they have argued for the inclusion of their personal law as a legality in the constitution. And Nehru therefore felt that it is a good idea to have democracy. In Aristotle, he didn't want a democracy, obviously, but what he was looking at is something like this, which is if you have a larger body of rational people, mind you, not irrational people, a larger body of rational people coming together as citizens, then the likelihood of there being some kind of discussions, and deliberations among the citizens, and that being a mechanism of resolution of differences of opinion or conflict is very likely. Okay, so Joshua Cohen, who talks about deliberative democracy, actually quotes Aristotle, and he says that Aristotle was probably one of the first who believed in this whole idea of rationally discussing things. And this was Aristotle's mechanism against revolutions. Okay, if you had revolutions, then what would happen is that you will degenerate into a democracy, or you'll get into some degenerate form of government. So, to stop that degeneration from happening, he was relying on this body of citizens. So, this particular body, which is a result of politeia and understands eudaimonia as ethical good. Good life is not comfortable. I have an air conditioner. I have a wonderful car. I have a wonderful mattress to sleep on. Okay. I have a computer to spew my nonsense on a daily basis to students. All these things. Uh, no, he's not talking about the good life like this. That kind of good life was, uh, what's his name? Vijay Mallya. Okay. Kingfisher, the king of good times. So get drunk, enjoy, have a good time. He made his money, which he squandered away. He threw lavish parties on his yacht. He had a personal yacht, or something which is in between a boat and a ship. Uh, and he called it the Indian Empress. He had a Formula One team. So he had all these things. That is his idea of good life. That is our idea of good life as well. We equate riches with comforts and comforts with good life. That's not what Aristotle is talking about. That is why I said it has to be seen as a rete ethike. A rete ethike has to be seen in conjunction with koinonia politicae. If you see both these things together, then you get the idea of what politeia and eudaimonia are.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
arete ethica in English translation means moral virtue, moral
Uh,
excellence.
no, not really. That is, please don't go by what you find on the internet. Uh, please don't do that. Uh, internet will give you all kinds of wonderful things. Actually, if you want if you, the real thing is it becomes happiness. Okay, it becomes happiness. It becomes, if you're a Christian, it becomes blessedness. It becomes moral bliss. It becomes all that kind of things. But in Aristotle, it is good life. Good is only defined as moral. I told you the Greeks do not distinguish The Greeks do not distinguish between the morals and the ethics. For them, they are one and the same. We have to wait till the 18th, 19th centuries in order to see the slight distinction between these two things, morals and ethics. So in the case of Aristotle, they are one and the same. And no, don't go by. See, that is the problem with this internet. It gives you instant answers, but it gives you terrible translations. You have to. This is a translation of an idiom. You don't translate it literally. You don't translate what arete means and what ethike means. You don't translate it like that. You have to translate it into an idiom. And the idiom or the idiomatic, not idiotic, idiomatic translation is one which talks about a morally good life or just a good life, which has the good is the moral.
Okay,
And,
sir.
and this is exactly what you find in Rousseau and in Kant. Okay, Rousseau calls it the general will, Kant calls it the good will, but it is moral. It is moral. Both good life, I'm sorry, both good will and general will in substance are moral. They are absolutely moral. So don't translate it literally. You have to you have to find an idiom. That is what I was doing when I taught hermeneutics. Remember? I hope you remember what I taught in hermeneutics. Hmm? Yes, Madam Kirti, any other questions?
One last question, sir.
No,
Uh,
no, you can ask any number of questions. It is,
Thank you.
I keep telling you that there is no limit on questions.
Sir,
Questioning is your right. Please ask as many questions as you want.
sir, why did Aristotle keep polity in middle? I mean, in between oligarchy and democracy. I've gone through your lecture, sir, but unable to understand. So once again, please explain it again, sir.
See, it's a simple concept. If you're looking at the degenerative cycle, I'm not going to talk about the cycle that we find in Plato, okay?
Okay.
Because in Plato, it is a very, very, what should I say, uncompromising and very tough stand that he takes about what is, hey, shut up. He takes a very, very uncompromising stand. And what is that uncompromising stand that he is taking? The uncompromising stand that he is taking is that everything degenerates. If you start with a monarchy, he might start with good intentions. He might take care of his people, the monarch or the king, but he gets corrupted by power, so he becomes a tyrant. He's intoxicated with power. So that's the translation I have read by Barker, who I consider to be an excellent translator of Greek. And so Plato says he gets corrupted. So once that corruption starts, it becomes, once he becomes the king or the monarch, once he gets corrupted, he becomes a democrat. A democracy is a rule without caring for the subjects who are in your kingdom. Okay, so that's the degeneration. It begins. Now, once the degeneration begins, there is no regeneration. What happens is that when the king becomes a tyrant, then automatically you will find that a group of people called the oligarchy will take over. And the oligarchy is not an enlightened kind of a body. They are not working for anybody's good. They are not doing anything. They have seen how the tyrant has been able to rule. So they take uh, strength in numbers, but they don't want too many people, because otherwise that would mean that they have to share power with too many people. So this group of people overthrows the tyrant and establishes an oligarchy, which is already a degenerated form of government. It is already a degenerated form of government. So the democrat or the democracy is now an oligarchy. Instead of being ruled by one particular person who doesn't care for the good of everyone, you have this group which does exactly what that one person was doing when he became a democrat. So oligarchy right from the beginning is perverted. Right from the beginning, it is perverted. There is nothing good about oligarchy. Now, when the oligarchy or the oligarchs, if you want to call them, when they start ruling with their own interest, then they are also doing what the king who became a democrat does. So immediately the oligarchy for Plato doesn't last for very long. It is taken over by mobs. Okay, it's taken over by mobs. And therefore, once it is taken over by mobs, it becomes a democracy or a mobocracy, rule of the mob. That's what democracy is for Plato. So for him, there is only one form of, in this whole cycle that we see, there is only one form which is acceptable, which is monarchy. And he's not saying that it is a very good thing, because the monarch is becoming a democrat. So it's not a very good thing that way, if you look at it that way. So what is it that you are deriving from this? He is saying we have to stop this degenerative cycle. We have to put an end to this degenerative cycle. And how do we do it? We do it by creating the ideal republic. So this is the scheme or schemata that you find in Plato. Okay, this is what you find in Plato. But if you look at Aristotle, Aristotle somehow didn't like the idea of deductively mathematical reasoning. And when you do deductive reasoning, please remember that there is an ascription of values. Let me explain that. What is an ascription? An ascription is something that you attribute, logically perhaps, but there is no correspondence between logic and reality. Okay, that is basically what uh, can happen with deductive reasoning. You can prove something through deductive logic, but does it correspond to what actually is happening? No. So that is something that you find in uh, Aristotle, that you cannot and should not, you cannot and should not go by deductive reasoning, because you are ascribing something as a value. A simple example, the same thing that I've been giving. All trees are green. Well, this looks like a tree, but it doesn't have leaves. That happens in autumn, I told you. Uh, and so you say, what is this? Well, this is not a tree. It is not a tree. So give it some other name. Give it some other name. Now, each time you keep finding counters to the deductive reasoning, you have to keep creating separate categories. You have to keep creating separate categories, and that for Aristotle is not acceptable. He doesn't agree with that. And Plato mathematically derived that the ideal politeia, I told you the book Republic was actually called Politeia by Plato, and it is a Latin translation which makes it res publica or res public, and that is how it became republic. But he also has this politeia concept, but he's again saying there are only a few people. All right. And also, if you look at that whole thing of deductive, he also reached a number of citizens, an ideal number, because he didn't have slaves, he didn't have women who are not citizens. So he reached a number of, mathematically, for the ideal republic to work, he reached a number which is 5040. He wanted it to be the politeia, which is the polis. He wanted it to be, he wanted it to comprise of 5040 people. And that is done through a purely mathematical reasoning. Okay, unfortunately, we don't have the time to go into it. There are courses in other universities especially abroad, where you can study one thinker for a semester. Okay, you can study one thinker for a semester. We don't have that kind of, what should I say? We don't have that kind of luxury. So we are actually tied down to all these content, all the content that has been put in. In my opinion, this is far too many things for a semester, but doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Let's not get into those. Now, Aristotle's belief, excuse me, Aristotle's belief is that everything that Plato has done, including the number of people in the ideal republic or the or Plato's politeia, is all ascriptive and derived mathematically. Mathematically, he wanted to see society as an organism, not just an organism, but he wanted to see human society as an organism that is living in nature, in harmony with nature. Please don't overlook this particular fact. If Plato is mathematical and deductive in arriving at his politeia, Aristotle is biological and inductive in his arriving at his politeia. Okay, in the politeia there is eudaimonia. For a moment, let's not talk about eudaimonia. We'll just talk about the politeia, which is the polity, which has been translated as polity. Okay, now if you look at this, then what exactly is Aristotle saying? Aristotle is observing the behavior of people, and it is through this observation of different kinds of behavior by different kinds of people that he comes to an idea of what constitutes a properly rational system of beliefs. Okay, he comes to the idea of what constitutes a proper system of rational beliefs. So it's inductive. Okay, I told you. Uh, Deductive is represented as an inverted triangle. You start with a broad base and come down to a narrow conclusion from the general to the particular. In Aristotle, it is this. You start with a particular and come down to the general. So before you ask me, how can you do that? I'm sure you've all been through this in school. These are all stupid examples, but I believe that, these stupid examples have a purpose to serve, though you shouldn't stretch them too much, because if you stretch them too much, then they are not things that will continue to mean what they are meaning. But take the example when you had to write tests, when you had been given a test, you had written a test, and some people have done well, some people haven't done well. And if this is a pattern, and if this is a pattern, then you have those who are the laggards, laggards, laggards meaning those who lag behind in the class. So I have often heard teachers telling the laggards, look, why don't you look at this group or this person? Look how he is studying. Look how well he is doing. Why are you so careless? Why are you so careless? Why aren't you attributing any importance whatsoever to your studies? It is obvious to us from looking at your scripts that this is not the way to study, or you're not studying at all. So start studying. So you show somebody as an example. You show somebody as an example and you say emulate. And when I talked to you about socialization, I had told you this, that we also make reference groups. For me, when I was doing my MA, my reference group were people like Sudipto Kaviraj, then Rajiv Bhargava, then uh, Sanjay Palshikar, Gurpreet Mahajan, Neeraja Gopal. So these were my reference group. And what was my ambition? My ambition was that I should be better than them. I should better than myself. Uh, I should be better than them. And otherwise, I should be at least as good as them. I don't want to be second best. Okay. So we also set goals like that. That is the whole thing about socialization. You have a reference group, people whom you hold as heroes and you emulate. Now, what Aristotle is trying to do is that he's basically trying to say that anything that is mathematically derived, the applicability of it is suspect, because mathematical deductions, especially geometrical deductions, do not have life in them. Society, on the other hand, has life. That's why he says it's an organism. A society is an organism because it consists of organisms. I told you yesterday that Aristotle was the first person to accept the idea that we are animals. You don't see anybody else doing it before him. You don't see anybody else doing it after him, till perhaps Charles Darwin comes on to the scene. the anime. If you look in that, he is basically talking about how we are animal spirits. So man is a social animal, primary natural potential. I'm now talking about his theory of form. You need to understand this if you want to know why politeia is located after oligarchy and in between, before democracy. So it is something which is in between oligarchy and in between democracy, right? Why is he saying it? Now look at the way he's constructed his typology. Monarchy, okay, and a monarch gets corrupted, he becomes a tyrant, so he called it tyranny. And then he said a group of well-meaning citizens, a group of well-meaning citizens come and establish another good form of government. Unlike in Plato, where everything is now a degenerative cycle, in Aristotle, there are regenerations in the middle. There are regenerations in the middle. So what is he saying? He is saying that an aristocracy comes, intentions are good, people are perhaps rational, they may even be enlightened, but they are, since it's a small group, they are susceptible to corruption. By corruption, I don't mean the modern day definition of corruption. What I mean is uh, the kind of corruption, as in they're getting intoxicated again with power, losing contact with society. See, that is the greatness of our film stars and our politicians, right? How are they popular in the first place? Popular comes from population, right? It comes from population. So you become popular when you have the adoration of so many people. But when you have the adoration of so many people, you see all these people trying to reach you as a nuisance. So if you're a film star, then you devise ways of uh, commuting so that nobody recognizes you, so that nobody recognizes you. Every city has a population of these ultra rich people that nobody sees on the roads. They are to be found in each other's houses, or they are to be found in star hotels and, the pubs and bars in star hotels. So you don't see these people, do you? They live in Hyderabad, the film stars. You don't see them. And if you become a politician, then you have a retinue. There's a pilot car, there's an escort, and there is your car, whatever politician you are, a minister or the chief minister, and behind you, you have a minesweeper, a jammer of radio signals and radio frequencies. You travel in a car that is not just bulletproof, but it is also landmine proof. So you're removed. You're far removed from the very people who have voted for you. You're removed from them. So you don't really know what is the public pulse. And that is the reason why aristocracy, which is the rule of a few, those who interact among themselves, lose sight of the betterment of society, lose sight of the betterment of society, and therefore they degenerate into an oligarchy. So look at this, there is a degenerative and a regenerative component. Now, after an oligarchy degenerates, then obviously people are going to revolt. So it becomes a democracy. Taking the idea that there is a regeneration in the form of an aristocracy after a tyranny, Aristotle decides to broad base the politeia. The politeia is more broad based, includes more people as citizens. It's not an uncompromising, rationally derived system, mathematically derived system that you see in Plato. Aristotle's politeia is a large group of wise people who understand the idea of common good, which is also there in Plato. When Plato created the ideal republic, what was he aiming at? He's aiming at a common good. That is why he emphasizes so much on education. So the common good is also a factor in Aristotle. And unlike in Plato, where you have to take it as an inference, it is an inference that he is saying that there is a common good. In Aristotle, we find that the notion of the common good is clearly articulated by Aristotle himself. You do not need, you do not need to infer that he's aiming at the creation of a common good. So, if you want a common good, then if you have a greater number of people as citizens, then the possibility of achieving this greater good becomes a reality. So, he therefore is locating the politeia or polity in between an oligarchy, which is a corrupted body, corrupted out of an aristocracy, and democracy, which takes over from the corrupted group of people, the oligarchy. In between that, he is deliberately putting his polity. Why? Because he believes that more number of people being involved in the affairs of politeia, more number of people who realize that there is a common good, which is something applicable to all. Common good is that, isn't it? And that's why he's talking about the politeia promoting eudaimonia. He is talking about the politeia promoting eudaimonia, because life will now be ethical. There will be rationality and reason. Society is not a mathematical equation, it is a biological organism. It has all the qualities of an organism. There will be dissensus. Dissensus is the opposite of consensus, right? So there will be dissensus. But when you are involving, when you are involving a larger number of people, then the possibility of solving these complications that arise out of a dissensus through argument, through logic, not mathematical, but biological, all those things will become things which can be attained and sustained. So if you locate it at the aristocracy, you say that is the politeia. It has already shown that it can degenerate. If you locate it at the level of the monarchy, then it has already shown that that can also degenerate. Democracy is degenerate. So he is therefore locating it at a place where you don't degenerate into a democracy. So technically, if you actually create the cycle after the politeia comes into being, there is no more cycle. There is no more cycle. You cannot, even if you try to create a cycle again like this, no, because you're stopping the processes of degeneration at the level of the politeia. And you are creating this politeia. It's actually politeia. That's how it is supposed to be pronounced. Politeia is the safeguard. It is the safeguard for a moral life. And if you want a safeguard, involve greater number of people in it. Find solutions for your problems, disagreements through the form of discussion. Because remember, man, by the time the politeia has come into being, man has transformed from being a social animal, which is the primary natural potential, to the finished form, which is man is a political animal. Man is a political animal. So, politics for him and the political animal, they both represent the highest form. They both represent the highest form of rationality and enlightenment. That is the reason why he locates the politeia there. Now, I am anticipating a question. How is man becoming rational? In Plato, fine, he's derived everything mathematically. Okay, all right, that has its limitations. Mathematical derivations and their applicabilities have their limitations. But if you were to strictly consider the politeia of Plato, the politeia of Plato is a result of the education system. Everything, the meritocracy, is because of the education system, and it is because of the fact that children are not brought up as children of particular parents. Parentage remains unknown. They are brought up as children of the police, and they go through the system of education. So, for all the criticism that Aristotle levels against Plato, Plato has a strategy of achieving politeia. The strategy is the system of education, the segmentation of society to do various different or to perform various different tasks that are necessary for the well being of the society and the police. And you have the enlightened rule of the philosopher kings who have proved themselves to be rational, extremely rational, because they have done well in the examination system. So Plato's politeia, its foundations are understandable. What about Aristotle? What about Aristotle? What is the strategy that Aristotle is showing us? I find politeia should be located not in one person, not in a group of people, but in a not a small group of people, but a large group of people. But how are these people going to become wise? How are you determining that these people are rational? How are you determining that these people are rational? That becomes the question. And it's not as if Aristotle doesn't have an answer. That is why I said he's not an empiricist. He might use inductive form of reasoning to show that society is a biological organism, but the moment he invokes a telos, please remember the politeia is not a creation of Aristotle. Aristotle believes that the telos is there, and only rational people understand that telos. What is the telos? Politeia, that promotes good life. Arete ethike. So the realization that there is a telos, the realization that there is a telos, and what that telos what that telos is what makes Aristotle confident that you can have a politeia in a large number of people, or in a larger number of people, and that these people have the rationality. Because if you don't have rationality, then how are you going to comprehend that there is a telos? It is rationality, and there is a bit of that idealism, not idealism of the international relations variety, but there is a bit of that idealism of the Platonic variety. Okay, the ideal being the real. So you people have an idea that there is a telos, and the realization, those people who have shown the realization that there is a telos, and that the telos is the promotion of eudaimonia, whose primary ingredient is arete ethike. All that is demonstrative of the fact that the people who will now take over the ruling of the polity, the police, they are going to be rational human beings. And please do not underestimate the biological representation of society. The reason why I say please do not underestimate or underrate uh, the estimation of, the estimation of society as a biological organism. He does this deliberately because all organisms require some kind of solidarity. He's called us animals, and animals require solidarity. Look at nature. Animals have their own societies. They may not be like ours. They may not be like ours because we have now become very, very extra natural. I don't say supernatural, that has a different meaning. So you'd have to say extra natural. So that is the significance of the biological organism called society. By looking at society as a biological organism, people rationally comprehend. People rationally comprehend mutual dependence. Okay? They actually understand mutual dependence. This idea was revived in the 19th century again, and it was actually called mutualism, especially by the anarchists. Okay, they talked about two things. One, which is mutualism, sorry. The other thing that they talked about is the usufruct anarchism. Usufruct anarchism, as advocated by Proudhon, though there is no power structure, he still says that there is a division of responsibilities. Use. Usufruct is useful or something becoming useful. So you need a farmer to grow. So he says you can't say that, you know, there is a communism, there is a communism and there are people. That's it. Is that it? No. People have to perform different jobs. People have to perform different kinds of things for the society to survive. So there's got to be a broad-based division of work. So that's why it's called usufruct anarchism. And there is mutualism, which says that unless people mutually depend on each other, there is no way society can exist. So that is the organic conception of society. The conception of society that we find in Plato is purely rationally, mathematically derived. The nature of the society. Whereas Aristotle is deriving the nature of the society. The nature, not just society, the nature of that society. The nature of that society for him is through the realization of mutual dependency. That is why when you talk about the master and you talk about the slave, you are saying that the slave is not dispensable. You don't use him and throw him away because you have the idea of a common good, good life has the notion of morally good life and a common good. And a common good, by definition, is the definition of the good of all. The good of all. So that includes the good of the slave as well. So For him, revolutions have to be prevented. Revolutions have to be prevented so that society does not degenerate again. Please remember that the typology is not like the ancient Indian typology. You have the Krita Yuga, that is followed by the Treta Yuga, and that is followed by the Dwapara Yuga, then the Kali Yuga, and the Kali Yuga becomes so adharmic that it destroys completely, it destroys itself completely, the universe, and starts again. You have a Krita Yuga again. So, as per what we have today in front of us, we are supposed to be in the 14th cycle of creation. We are supposed to be in the 14th creation cycle. Okay, this is not what Plato or Aristotle is saying that this will go on. No, they want to stop it. They want to stop that degenerative cycle. And Aristotle believes that he will succeed where Plato is bound to fail, simply because Plato's deductions are all mathematical, abstract, whereas his understanding of the society as a biological organism and as something that requires mutual dependence and consequently a common good, it is all based for him in the understanding of society as an organism rather than as some kind of a logical, abstract logical deduction. Okay, there is logic in this kind of argument as well, but this logic is different. It's not abstract logic. He will say, my logic is inductive. I'm seeing what is happening, and therefore, on the basis of what I have observed, and this is why you find Aristotle being quoted again and again in science textbooks, biological sciences, in school. Okay, so that is a very, very long answer. I have tried to put in as much detail as I can so that you get it. Did you get it? If you didn't, please shut up. Shut up. If
Yes, sir.
you didn't get
I
it,
got it, sir.
so what are
Thank you,
you?
sir.
Yeah. So what are you thinking, Mr. Akshay?
I am thinking, when will you complete this answer?
I know. No, I wanted to extrapolate each and everything so that she gets why he is locating the polity where he is locating at the bottom and not at the top. Normally, when you look at the best, you try to locate it at the top. The best is always at the top, right? The best
Yes,
is never at the bottom. I think that was what she was confused about. Am I right, Kirti?
yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. Sir, thank you, sir, so much.
Yeah. No, no, no. Don't. Don't thank me. It's my pleasure. I have to do this. Despite Garu, Akshay Puneet Pantulu Garu thinking that I'm spouting rubbish. Huh? Akshay?
No, sir. No,
Mm,
sir.
yeah. So I went into those details because I realized you didn't state it openly, madam, but you actually, my God. No, no. I've got to get this bell removed from this room immediately. No, so I got that question. I got that question that you were surprised that he's locating the polity right at the bottom,
Yes,
just
sir.
about democracy.
Yes, sir.
That is how I tried to, the explanation was to justify how or why he placed it there. I hope I have communicated to you.
Yes, sir.
What, Mr. Shyam Palle?
Sir,
How are you, sir?
sir, I'm good, sir. What about you, sir?
If I'm giving such terribly long answer as Akshay Pantulagaru is objecting to and wondering when I'll shut up, I must be very well. Huh? I need to learn German from you, Sham. When are you going to teach me German?
When will we get offline classes? Then only I'll able
Uh,
to come to Hyderabad.
hmm? You can't teach me German online?
Yes, sir. Of course, I can.
Hmm. So I want you to teach me some German. I know a bit, just a bit, just a bit.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. Who else is there? Who are the people still left? Hmm? Apart from you three, there are four more. Who are there? Let's see who are there. Kalpana Garu,
Sir,
please muster up the courage to write. Hmm? You start writing in English, speaking in English. Don't worry if people laugh at you. Always remember that people may laugh at you, but you are learning, they are not. Okay? It shouldn't deter you.
okay, sir.
Yeah. Rachna, no
Yeah.
questions today?
Um,
Hmm.
Nothing, sir.
No questions today. And then there is Rekha Roy. Rekha Roy, do you find my classes useless? I think Rekha Roy. Yeah, where is she? Rekha Roy,
Sir,
do you find my classes completely useless? Hmm? You can be honest. You can be honest.
sir,
Do you find my classes totally rubbish, useless? Hmm? I take silence for a yes, so you do find them rubbish. Krupa Rani, are you there, ma'am?
yes, sir.
Hmm. You think my classes are rubbish?
No, sir, it is very useful to us.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Akshay,
Hello, sir.
yeah,
Sir, actually network problem. Your class very fine,
okay.
not
Okay,
rubbish.
okay, Rekha.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rekha. Akshay,
Sir.
you and Padma,
Sir.
she's not here today.
Yes, sir.
Please collect feedback, honest feedback about my classes
Yes, sir.
so that I know what people are thinking and go ahead and go further ahead by changing or staying on course by defending myself and saying why I teach the way I do. So, will you collect your feedback?
Yes, sir.
So, do that. Do that in conjunction with Padma. Everybody, please give feedback. The people who come regularly, please give feedback. I would
Yes.
appreciate that. I really would appreciate that. Thank you very much. I
Thank you,
think,
sir.
yeah,
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.